accorded the highest civilian honor of Israel. He was received by a delegation of senior leaders and Netanyahu himself, who was present to welcome him at the airport. Both Donald Trump and Netanyahu are expected to address the media and make a statement. We are waiting for that to happen. We're getting you those live visuals on your screens right now. It is a day that people have accorded all the credit to Donald Trump for his relentless intervention to ensure that there is a peace ties that is brokered between Gaza and Israel, and the hostages are returned from both sides. The first two batches of hostages have been returned to Israel by Gaza. That is Netanyahu on his screens right now, ladies and gentlemen. He's expected to make a statement. He's expected to receive Donald Trump, and they will be addressing the media shortly. The question that is being raised is that, is this going to be a short-lived peace that has been brokered between both sides? Will Hamas be able to keep the bargain on their end? Will they be committed to ensuring peace in the region? And how is this going to impact the new geopolitical equation in the Middle East? Of course, all credit being accorded to Donald Trump at this point in time. Donald Trump is expected to address the Israeli parliament, and he is also going to be accorded the highest civilian honor of Israel by their president. Senior delegates and leaders, ministers, all the cabinet members from Netanyahu's government are present there to welcome Donald Trump. Remember, the first few batches of hostages have already been released. Donald Trump is going to address the Israeli parliament now, and our deputy managing director, Karthik Sharma, is on the phone line with me right now. But ladies and gentlemen, those are the first visuals of Donald Trump over there in Israel, in Knesset, where he is set to address the Israeli parliament. Our deputy managing editor, Karthik Sharma, is on the phone line. Well, Karthik, this is definitely a landmark moment, a historic moment that we are looking at right now. Donald Trump present over there. He has been instrumental and going to be solely credited for ensuring that he's managed to broker the peace between Hamas and Israel. Of course, there's the first few batches of hostages who have also been released. What can we now expect, and how long is this peace going to be sustained in the region?
I think it's a great feat for President Trump, because after Oslo Accord, I don't think any American president has been able to do something like this. For simple reason, because Israeli perspective of Palestine is that it's a security problem. The global perspective is it's not a security problem. They feel that the problem of Palestine is the issue of representation and coexistence. The Israeli spokespersons and Israeli commentators feel that it's about ideology, that the ideology of Hamas is so corrosive that it does not allow Israel to feel at ease. So there cannot be any conversation, because the ideology of Hamas says that Israel does not have the right to coexist, or does not have the right to exist. That is why the slogan of Hamas is from river to the sea. When they say from river to the sea, it means that they will overrun the entire Israel. And when we say river, it's about the Jordan River there. That's number one. Now the second issue is that with Netanyahu being there, he himself heading a very right-wing government, he holds the mandate. But the third issue is that there is a global outrage over the way Palestinians have been treated in Gaza, and they have become the collateral. The counter to that view has been that the infrastructure which Hamas built over a period of time was hybrid, Samya. And the argument was that, inside hospitals were the tunnels, inside civil infrastructure were the military barricades. So that is why Israel said that we had no choice but to bombard indiscriminately, because both military and civilian infrastructure was used. And fourth, and the most important of all, which people just fail to realize, that this is the first AI war that is being fought. Most of the targets that have been picked up in Gaza have been done with the help of AI, which adds another level of, I would say, indiscriminate target selection. But going back to the issue, it's a very big day because it was Hamas that attacked Israel. You see, we have to understand one thing. On certain political issues, we can disagree with the approach which Israel has been taking. But fundamentally what happened? Israel got attacked and 1,300 Israelis got killed. Numbers of them got abducted and they were taken to Gaza. And Hamas thought that they are going to politicize this issue and bring other players back, saying that we exist and Israel will need to talk. Now what that led to was like it opened a Pandora's box. And in Samia, before Hamas attacked, most of the fight that took place in West Asia was covert wars. All those wars became overt. What happened was Israel, with American help, ended up destroying Fordo in Iran, unprecedented. Israel attacked Lebanon, unprecedented. Israel did a pager attack, unprecedented. There was a war with Iran which happened on multiple occasions, unprecedented. Israel bombed hostage negotiators in Qatar, very, very unprecedented. There is a continuous fight that is taking place with Houthi militants in Yemen, again very unprecedented. So entire West Asia got sucked into it. And if the West Asian politics is not divided between Jew versus Muslims or Christian versus Muslim, we have to understand that the politics of West Asia rotates around Shia-Sunni axis. That is why all the Sunni countries were thinking that, that Israel is doing their dirty job. And Israel also effected a regime change in Syria. They overthrew Alawites. And now you have a former Taliban commander leading Syria and giving speech in UN. So this is today's world. For Trump to be there tells us two. One, there are no ideological moorings which will have enough space. And look at these pictures. You see, these pictures are very, very important. This time Trump's delegation has Ivanka and Ivanka's husband. Ivanka and Ivanka's husband has been absent from the first presidency. Both of them were associated as senior advisors to Trump in the initial presidency. There was great criticism. Both of them are there, and the first visit of Donald Trump as US President in his first term was brokered by Ivanka's husband. Now they are in West Asia, which means that Ivanka's husband continues to play a role in the West Asian politics quietly. That's number two, if you look at these visuals. Third and the foremost important thing here is, now will this peace plan hold? Because no terrorist organization can acquiesce itself for liquidating. No terrorist organization says that they're going to liquidate themselves. They metamorphose into something new, even more violent. The way Taliban in Afghanistan metamorphosed into ISIS. How? Because when the people were tortured in the prisons of Abu Ghraib, and most of them were Baath Party activists, they created ISIS and they took over Mosul. So in this way, Hamas will have to be dealt differently. I'm not saying that Hamas is going to change its ideology,
right,
but it has to be made ineffective. So keeping all this in mind, I think it's a tremendous movement in history. But who is going to hold it? Because 3 years that Trump is going to go, maybe the next American president will not be interested. Thank God for the Constitution, because we have Putin for life, Xi Jinping for life, Asim Munir for life, Kim Jong for life. We are dealing with leaders for life. Even our neighborhood leader is not going anywhere. Mr. Yunus, though he was only supposed to be there for 3 months. And then we have Taliban for life. So imagine we are dealing with leaders for life globally, all over the world. Maduro, leader for life. Look at the leader of one of the Eastern Bloc.
Absolutely.
You wanted to say something, Samya?
No, absolutely. I was just telling you that, of course, you've brought this perspective about how Jared Kushner has played a very important role, and he will continue to do so when it comes to West Asia politics. And now, of course, like you're mentioning, that Donald Trump is here today, he may not be there in future, and with the leaders, change policies would also change. Whether there is going to be someone holding forth to ensure that Hamas is going to be disarmed, so that they do not try to be an overshoot like we saw it happen when it came to Taliban, to ISIS, like you were mentioning. But thank you for putting things into perspective over here, Kartikeya Sharma. I'm also joined by our guest this afternoon. I'm joined by Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, who's a former Indian diplomat. Ambassador Gupta, thank you for taking your time and joining me over here. My senior colleague was maintaining how it's important to ensure that Hamas needs to be disarmed. Otherwise, what we saw happen with Taliban, where part of it ended up becoming an ISIS, this could also metamorphose itself into something more lethal. So who's going to ensure that, Ambassador Gupta? Because this is just a tip of the iceberg. We are playing out these visuals on our screens right now, which is Donald Trump at Knesset, and he is going to make an address very soon over there. But international community will have to continue making their presence felt, will have to continue their efforts so that the peace can sustain in the region. What efforts is there, therefore, imperative to ensure that? Ambassador Gupta.
Well, I frankly am not worried so much about, who is going to ensure that the Hamas do their part. I'm sure the Israelis will be very keen to oversee that. I'm sure the interim administration, which President Trump said would be headed by him, and include Tony Blair and all. These are all people who are very sympathetic to Israel. So I'm sure they will be very happy to look after that part. But I am more concerned about what happens about the promises on the other side, whether this agreement is going to lead to a durable peace in the region, whether it's going to lead to a Palestinian state ultimately. Because if the Palestinians have been dealt a heavy blow, thousands of Palestinians, I mean, some figures say 70,000 or more, they have been killed, including women and children. And many more have been displaced and their properties have been razed to the ground and so on. So the Palestinians have been dealt a very heavy blow by Israel. And the United States has either just it shut its eyes or couldn't do very much to restrain Israel. So my concern is more on the other side, who is going to ensure or who is going to oversee that this agreement leads to some sort of a durable peace for Palestine. Because if it doesn't, then Hamas will come back. If it doesn't, then the Palestinians will, their disquiet, their rebellion, their unhappiness continue to mount. So ultimately, they have to find a balanced solution. While Hamas are disarming, also move on the demands of the Palestinians, because Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that he does not favor a separate Palestinian state. So, some pressure will have to be applied on the Israelis to ensure that some sort of a Palestinian state is created in the long term.
So, Ambassador Gupta, what you're essentially trying to say is that there has to be a mutually agreed terms between both sides to ensure that peace prevails. Otherwise, this is only for a temporary solution. This is only for optics otherwise, and it may not have the due, the need of the hour to ensure that Hamas is disarmed, there is peace in the valley, Palestinian demands are met, so that there is some sort of a pressure or an intervention or a conversation that needs to be continued with the Israeli side. Is that what you're trying to say, Ambassador Gupta?
Well, yes. Basically, my point is that this solution has to be implemented in a balanced manner. That while Hamas is disarmed, that is fine. And I'm sure the Israelis will go into that, and I'm sure Trump and Tony Blair and others who favor or support Israel will go into that. But equally important is the fact that the Palestinians' demand for a statehood, a separate statehood, that should also be met. Most countries are in favor of a two-state solution, in which Israel and Palestine, they live side by side. Now, if that demand is not met, by Israel and others, then we won't be able to have durable peace in the region. I mean,
So,
right now they are only plucking the low-hanging fruits, that the hostages are released and, some sort of peace is established. These are all low-hanging fruits. But the main issues will arise when the transitional authority takes control of Gaza. Then what happens after the transitional authority establishes its administration? Will it work in favor of a setting up of a Palestinian state in those areas in the long term? So those are issues which are very important.
but Ambassador Gupta, I have to ask you about the man of the moment over here, Donald Trump. He had made a commitment. He made it very clear. He publicly made statements about that. He is going to ensure that this war is going to come to an end, and he has walked the talk. He is right now over there. He is going to be accorded the highest civilian honor of Israel, the Presidential Medal of Honor. Could this have happened without Donald Trump? Do you think it was even possible?
Well, I would also like to give some credit to the past American president, that is President
Fair.
Biden, who I think played much more important role in terms of restraining Israel and in terms of asking that Israel must move in terms of a two-state solution. So he also played a very important role, and President Trump has tried to continue on that path, and but let's not forget that when President Trump took over, a whole lot of issues in the region had already been settled. Israel was able to destroy the proxies, one of the proxies of Iran in Lebanon, in the Gaza, in other parts, Syria, and so on. So a lot of work had already been done by the time President Trump took over. So he can't be sort of given the whole credit. Some credit should also be given to the past president.
Agreed. Agreed, Ambassador Gupta. Of course, it has been like an ongoing process, and all the predecessors should also be accorded their due credit for ensuring that there is some sense of a channel that is established to carry out conversations and dialogue for the future of the region. But Ambassador Gupta, how is this going to impact the Middle Eastern politics now? There's going to be new dynamics, a geopolitical shift in their ties as far as Middle East is concerned. How is this going to impact Middle East at large?
Well, there are 2-3 aspects that we have to keep in mind. One is that this agreement, in a sense, depicts the victory of the countries which are allied to the United States. The Arab countries like Egypt, like Jordan, like Kuwait, like UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others, countries which are closer to the United States, they have been able to prevail. Turkey and others, they have been able to prevail. But then also, let's remember that this agreement leaves out the others, like Iran, who also has vital stakes in the region, and who was the main spoiler in the earlier agreements, which the US presidents made effort to establish. Iran was the main spoiler. But this time, because Iran was weak, Iran had been dealt a severe blow. So Iran was relatively quiet, and Iran didn't wish to interfere too much. So President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu together, they have been able to prevail, and they have been able to establish or let's say strengthen the political order which the United States had established in the region of countries aligning, those countries which align with the United States. They ultimately are able to prevail because the US is maintaining so many bases in the region. It is providing security cover and other support to these countries. The other countries like China and Russia, for instance, which have certain influence, India, which have certain influence. Now, these countries are not able to provide security cover to these countries. They don't want to go that far. Russia has been able to send some military supplies. China has been able to send some military equipment. India is providing some assistance. But this falls much short in comparison with that of the United States. So the United States and Israel have been able to re-establish the political order which was prevailing earlier, and they have been able to strengthen it further. They have been able to deal a heavy blow to the proxies of Iran, like the Hezbollahs in Lebanon, the Hamas here, and the ones in Syria and so on. So, but then the important point will be whether the issues pertaining to Palestine, in the long term, a separate Palestinian state, whether those issues will also be, given equal prominence, whether United States and Israel will agree to move in that direction. If they don't, then the unhappiness of the Palestinians, the unhappiness of the Iranians, and so on, it will continue to linger. And the Middle East and this region will continue to remain volatile and continue to witness more violence and more conflicts.
Exactly my next question, Ambassador Gupta. I wanted to ask you, what is going to be the long-standing impact in the long run, if at all this matter is going to be left unattended after the initial fanfare and celebration? Will it come back to square one? Do you think there is the inherent threat and the fear for that?
I'm sorry, I missed out the first part of your statement. Can you repeat that?
Whether this is going to, this ceasefire is going to be a long-term sustainable ceasefire, or is it only a momentary celebration? And if this matter is left unattended with conversations being held from both sides, do you feel that this area is a volatile space and it can come back to square one?
Well, again, I would refer to what I said earlier, that this ceasefire is a welcome development. It will continue to hold if both sides make efforts to establish it, to establish the peace process in a balanced way. That is, we do things for both sides, both for Israel as well as for Palestinians. But if we ignore one and only look after the interests of the other party, then I'm afraid this ceasefire won't hold for very long.
So in that case, Ambassador Gupta, what steps should be taken so that this area, this region, peace can prevail without the intervention of constantly like an international community or somebody like a Donald Trump who will have to intervene each time around? Can this area, can this region resolve its own crisis?
No, not without the support of external parties, external powers like the United States, for the simple reason that most of the Arab countries, they are not able to look after their own security. They are either depending on major countries like USA, Russia, or regional states like Pakistan and so on to meet their security needs. And except Iran,
Well, that was Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, former Indian diplomat, who was putting things into perspective for our viewers over here, saying that, of course, Donald Trump is the man of the moment, but it is also his predecessor, Biden, who also played a crucial role to ensure that there are diplomatic channels that should be opened up and kept that way for future conversations. Ambassador Yogesh Gupta is back with us. Ambassador Gupta, you were making that point over there about whether this region is self-contained, self-sustained when it comes to ensuring that the regional crisis can be mitigated by themselves without any intervention from a leader like Donald Trump or international community.
Yes, that is my view, that, unless the countries of the region become, they are able to meet their own security concerns, they are able to resolve their own problems, they will continue to require the intervention of external powers like the US or Russia or others.
have to ask you about the humanitarian aid that will now be, able to reach Gaza, because there were several of these border posts that were blocked, several of this humanitarian aid that was blocked earlier. At least there is some sense of relief on that front. What should be done to ensure that there is the immediate help that they require can be given to them?
Yes, of course. I think that is something which the countries of the region, like the Arab countries, they will certainly provide the required support and assistance. I'm sure other countries outside, like countries in Europe, US, even India and others, we will continue to support, the needs of countries in the region. So I think humanitarian support will flow in plenty, and I'm sure that it will become much easier for this aid to reach the Palestinians in Gaza.
Earlier, Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, that the specific demands of Palestinians are not going to be met if the Israeli side doesn't come on the talking table. Then it looks difficult for that the peace is going to be a long-term sustainable in this particular region. If you could elaborate upon what should be done from both sides so that demands and needs, for that matter, of the Palestinian sides is also not overlooked.
Well, I think it will be important for the transitional authority which is set up, which includes President Trump and former Prime Minister Blair and others, to take into account the interests of both sides, the interests of the Israelis, interests of the Palestinians, and so on, and implement the agreement in a balanced manner, keeping in view the fact that at the end of the day, or on the long-term basis, this transitional administration leads to some sort of a self-governing, authority for the Palestinians, in which the Palestinians are given more and more representation, in which the desires and opinions of the Palestinians are fully taken into account, and ultimately this authority is transformed into some sort of a self-governing body for the Palestinians. So if we have progress along those lines, then yes, this agreement has the potential to continue and to establish an authority which will be able to oversee, the establishment of some sort of a Palestinian state in the long term.
Of course, that is going to be the key factor that will determine a long-term sustainability of the ceasefire, with the help, of course, of the international community. But does it also go on to indicate, Ambassador Gupta, that each time around there is a crisis in Middle East, we could expect US intervention?
Well, in the past, it has always been like that. Because as I said, the countries of the region, they are not able to cater for their own security. They are dependent on the US, they are dependent on other countries for, military assistance or military equipment or economic assistance. So that has been a big issue.
Also, Ambassador Gupta, there are regional players, of course, like Qatar, Turkey, Egypt. How can they possibly contribute to ensure that the region is going to have a long-lasting peace deal in Middle East?
Well, the problem is that some of these countries, their interests, they are at loggerheads with each other. For instance, Turkey thinks differently than Saudi Arabia or Iran. These are different centers of power. Turkey thinks more in terms of the former Ottoman Empire, in which Turkey is their descendant, and Turkey feels that the Muslim countries should ultimately go along those lines, which the old Ottoman Empire represented. The Saudi Arabia is more interested in the Sunnis. They are more in favor of setting up, taking care of the interests of the Sunnis in the region. Similarly, the Iranians are more interested in the interests of the Shias, and they would like the administrations, and they would like the Shia the bodies which are more friendlier to them should be able to prevail in the decision making for various purposes.
Absolutely. They have their own challenges and they have their own limitations also, like you were mentioning. But I have to ask you about whether the two-state solution is still going to be a viable option. Are people from both sides, leaders from both sides, going to come on the talking table with the two-state solution in mind?
That is something which is difficult to say at this moment, because Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that he is not in favor of an independent Palestinian state. So whether the external powers like the US, like the European countries will be able to prevail upon Israel to agree to that sort of demand, separate Palestinian state, is something which is difficult to say, which will need to be seen.
Absolutely. But do you feel that if the Palestinian demands of two-state and otherwise is not going to be met, then perhaps to ensure that Gaza is built from scratch, that is going to be facing a roadblock?
Well, let us see. I mean, these are issues which are not very clear, which are more into the distant future, which are more speculative. But with the involvement of the US and the others, there is hope that at least they will be able to marshal considerable external assistance in developing Gaza in a totally new manner, in which will take into account the interests of the Palestinians, the concerns of the Israelis and others. So there is hope. I won't say that it is not possible. It is quite possible, likely. But one will have to see and see and watch.
But the Gaza needs a rebuilding, Ambassador Yogesh Gupta. It needs a rebuilding when it comes to economy, infrastructure. What role can the international community then play to ensure that Gaza stands on its feet?
Well, I think the Arab countries will provide a lot of financial support. Then I think countries of Europe, countries in Asia like Japan, India, South Korea and others, China, they will also provide some support, So financial support should be available,
But what would be the challenges, Ambassador Gupta? Even if the financial support is pouring it, do you feel that there is still going to be restricted challenges for Gaza?
Certainly, the challenges will be, as Israel will always, will be particular, will be sensitive about the presence of extremist groups like Hamas in Gaza. I mean, they will like the Hamas to be kept out or to be totally disarmed if they are allowed to stay in Gaza. So those challenges will remain, and it will then devolve on the transitional authority to see that they are able to take down those steps to ensure that either the Hamas are disarmed or they are kept out.
In a sense, to defang or disarm Hamas, of course, there is a lot of talk surrounding it. There are also apprehension whether they are going to be committed to this peace deal or not. This is only a temporary solution. Those are the concerns that are there in everybody's mind. But what would you expect from US now? Of course, Donald Trump is over there in Israeli parliament right now. We are expecting an address from his end. But what would you expect from the US? How should US hereby play a role further to ensure that Hamas is disarmed and the peace remains, keeping in mind the demands of Palestinians and the rebuilding of Gaza?
Well, President Trump will certainly, as the head of the transitional administration, he will have a very important role to ensure that this transitional authority is set up, it works in a balanced manner, it gets the necessary financial support. I don't expect the US itself to give a lot of money, but I'm sure he will be able to prevail upon the Arab countries and the Europeans and others to provide the necessary resources to this transitional authority.
Okay, we get your point, Ambassador Gupta. Thank you for being with us over here. I request you to kindly stay with us further as we are bringing in some more information for our viewers right now, that it was a scene of tears and triumph for both the people of Israel and Gaza as the 2-year-long nightmare finally came to an end on Monday. The process of the release of all the remaining 48 Israeli hostages from Gaza began today morning with emotions running high at the borders. Thousands of people gathered in Hostages Square, loudly cheering as news broke that the process of transferring the hostages to the Red Cross had begun. The International Committee of the Red Cross began a multi-phase operation to oversee the release of 20 Israeli captives and nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners under a plan brokered with US President Donald Trump's intervention. In Gaza, about a dozen masked and black-clad gunmen, apparently members of Hamas armed wing, arrived at Nasser Hospital, where a stage and chairs were laid out to welcome returning Palestinian prisoners. Donald Trump earlier declared war in Gaza over as he flew to Israel, where he will address the Israeli Knesset and co-chair a summit in Egypt on the ceasefire deal between Israel and terrorist outfit Hamas. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas entered a critical phase 2 years after 250 people were abducted by Hamas on 7th October 2023. Israel responded by launching a military campaign in Gaza. Hamas earlier published the names of the 20 Israeli hostages to be released under the first phase of a ceasefire agreement with Israel. And as the process to release the 20 living hostages began, all captives were handed over to the Red Cross. They were then taken to Reim military base in southern Israel before being moved to hospitals for medical attention and later to reunite with their families. The 28 deceased hostages will be returned in coffins draped with Israeli flags to a forensic institute for identification. In exchange for the hostages, Israel will free 250 Palestinian prisoners and 1,700 detainees from Gaza, including nearly 24 children. Earlier, IDF released footage showing the Israeli Air Force that had completed its preparation to receive the hostages returning to Israel from the Gaza Strip.
كل الناس بتخش كيف خش طيب.
And with that, we're slipping into a short break right now. Lots more lined up. Stay tuned and keep watching News 9.
This is India's #1 news network and you're watching News 9 English news.
क्वालिटी पे इतना कॉन्फिडेंस, इसीलिए बिरला ऑफिस एश्योरेंस। 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे। रजिस्टर करो birlaoffice.com पर।
Alakazam face disappear.
Smooth, silent, seamless. Sliding systems from headache.
Java 42, the answer.
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
You can take a left, you can take a right. Animals salsa or a little time. If you really feel it, say it on price. It's the vibe, it's the vibe, it's the vibe.
This is my tempo. The ultimate biking experience is incomplete without Servo 40 Extra from Indian Oil. Breaking them all over. can't do without it.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Welcome back, and we get you some breaking news at this point in time in the Durgapur gang rape case. 5th arrest has been made in the case, and this takes the total number of arrests in the case to 5. 5 arrests in the horrific gang rape case since reports last came in. West Bengal Governor C.V. Ananda Bose is set to visit Durgapur today to meet the victim who has been undergoing treatment. That is the big breaking news that we're getting you at this point in time. 5th arrest made in the Durgapur gang rape case, and meanwhile outrage over the incident and the state government's response continues to come in.
সম্পূর্ণ মিথ্যা, আমরা কোনো অ্যাকিউজ নয়, রেপ হ্যান ত্যান, বাস এইটুকুই জেনে নিন।
मैं आज दुर्गापुर में पीड़िता के देखने के लिए जा रही हूँ। अभी निकला हूँ, उनके पास जाकर पीड़िता के स्वास्थ्य अवस्था कैसे है, उनके माता पिता के साथ मिलेंगे। उड़ीसा का ट्रीटमेंट, वेस्ट बंगाल का ट्रीटमेंट अच्छा है कि नहीं, उनका मेंटल ठीक है कि नहीं, प्रॉपर इन्वेस्टिगेशन हुआ कि नहीं, पूछताछ करके रिकमेंड करके उसके पास मिलकर आकर मेरा गवर्नमेंट को रिकमेंड देने के लिए मैं जा रही हूँ।
That is one of the members from the delegation from Orissa State Commission for Women, which has left from Bhubaneswar to go to Durgapur today to meet the victim and take stock of the situation on ground. Chairperson Shovana Mohanty will meet the victim to assess her health, mental state and the progress of the investigation. The father of the rape and murder victim has strongly condemned Mamata Banerjee's remarks, saying that if the chief minister cannot protect women in her own state, she might as well issue a fatwa asking girls to stop leaving their homes.
उन्होंने बहुत अच्छा बात बोला है, हम उनको बोलेंगे आज ही रात एक फतवा जारी कर दे, कल सुबह से कोई लड़की घर से नहीं निकल पाएगा तो अच्छा रहेगा। कोई लड़की बाहर नहीं निकलेगा, कोई घटना नहीं घटेगा। उन्होंने जो काम करना चाहते हैं वो काम नहीं कर सकेंगे, और उनको नहीं करेगा तो उनको चीफ मिनिस्टर का पद छोड़ देना चाहिए।
Meanwhile, TMC leaders have come to the defense of Mamata Banerjee's controversial statement, saying her remarks were taken out of context. TMC leader Kunal Ghosh said that the chief minister's statement has been distorted. She never said that women should not go out at night.
ये ऑनरेबल सीएम का जो स्टेटमेंट है वो डिस्टॉर्ट किया गया है। ऑनरेबल सीएम कभी नहीं ये कहा कि रात में महिलाओं को नहीं निकलना चाहिए। क्यों बोलेंगे? ममता बनर्जी खुद महिला है, उनका टारगेट है मोर पावर टू, मोर फ्रीडम टू, मोर फाइनेंशियल हेल्प टू वुमेन। तो ममता जी क्या कहा? हर एक महिलाओं को पूरा अधिकार है जिस टाइम चाहे वो निकलने का, लेकिन पैरेलली ये जो हॉस्टल सिस्टम है उसका भी कुछ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होता है। ये ममता बनर्जी ये महिलाओं, ये घड़ी में जो 24 आवर्स है, हर मिनट में महिलाओं को हक है जहां चाहे निकलने के लिए, और वेस्ट बंगाल इज द सेफेस्ट state in the country.
And not just that, another leader, TMC MP Kakoli Dastidar, also weighed in. She said you cannot find any country in the world where rape really doesn't take place. She also slammed the centre over the Aprajita bill, saying that the West Bengal Assembly has passed the bill and it was sent to Delhi, but the central government has not allowed it.
How is the report presented? Report is presented by positive happenings, negative happenings and statistical analysis. So in the statistics, there will be 1 or 2 cases in a society. You cannot find any country in the world where this really doesn't take place. We think this is heinous crime. We want the perpetrator to be punished. We have passed the law, Parajita bill, in the government of West Bengal Assembly, and then it has gone to Delhi, but the central government has not allowed it. It is lying with the Rashtrapati ji. Now, whatever the central government does, the Rashtrapati ji does. So it is lying there in spite of our demand. It has not been passed. So the onus lies on the central government.
Now, West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee had stirred a massive controversy with her remarks stating that a girl should not be allowed to go out at night.
Private medical colleges also is to take care for their students.